Welcome, one and all. I see some great names out there, familiar friends, Chris and Joni, and familiar new friends, Lanny and Lady, and Deborah, Barbara. Hello, Linda. And then there's old friends that I don't get to see that often. Dick, hello. This is Dick, I think you're going to like I don't know. I think you might like our topic today.
Last piece. Wow, that's ballsy. Last piece.
Are you unmuted? So welcome, Loretta. See Lanny there. Hey, Lanny. Ladies coming in. So we always, I think most of you know this, we take a little time just to kind of let people get in the room and get settled. If anyone has questions about I don't want to spend a lot of time today about the class that's coming up, but I will just take a moment to say something. So there is a class coming up for the 4 Thursdays in September. There's information about them in the Old Soul Republic newsletter and my newsletter, and they've both gone out a couple times now. So if you didn't get them, look in your junk. You're also welcome to just to send me a note, which is not too hard to do through the website, or if you just know me. Everything will be recorded and only shared with students, right? So it's not going to be recorded and then put on YouTube for the whole world to hear your personal processing in the class. But if you need to miss a class or come late or whatever, I know some of you asked about that. Barbara, I think you might have asked about that. Then that's fine. That's okay. I mean, it's your decision what to do with the class that you get. And there will be some optional homework assignments that everyone will get, even if you miss a class. There will also be a final summary video that I'm going to do, kind of like wrapping it all up on top of our wrap up together. So hopefully it's going to be a good and wondrous experience together. I think it will be. And the last thing I will say to talk a little bit about that is, because for you guys here, some of you might be wondering, well, is this any different than what we're already doing with Jonathan on whatever this is, Thursdays at noon Pacific? And the answer is, of course it's different, and yet it's definitely going to have some similar feeling. So what makes it different is it's a closed group. So only the people that sign up will be in it. So we're going to take a journey processing the material together over 4 sessions. So that's creates a different kind of experience. More structure, kind of a focused path, and it will explore some themes that we've covered here. And then of course the ability to do the recording and to add the video at the end and to do some homework. So it's sort of like what we do here, but just sort of supercharged and organized and with kind of a sense of intimacy with a small group learning together. So there you go. I don't know, that's a little something about that. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that or anything before we take our breath and begin? Loretta, yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to do it, but I'm going to be away 2 of those
muted,
Thursdays.
although you don't look like you're muted.
No, I'm not.
Can anybody? Is that my problem?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, hang on.
She's fine.
Okay, go ahead again.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. I got you.
I'm going to be away the 2 of the 4 weeks. Is this something that you might? Because I really prefer to do them live. Is this something you might offer again at some point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, probably not.
Not soon, but I'm just retiring today, so.
Yeah, I don't think before the new year, maybe. Okay. But very likely there will be a special New Year class. Some of us did a 40-day New Year kickoff together. You were in that, Joni, right? I like that, actually. I like that group. Yeah, so there's always stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else with questions? Or, oh, David, I was just talking about the course that's coming up, and I'm only singling you out because you asked recently, what kind of things do you have going on so we can be involved or support you or whatever? Well, we have a class now. So hopefully you're seeing that info. There you go. And I think I'd like to get into our materials. Is there anything anybody else wants to talk about or bring up? Yeah, David, go ahead.
Just because I missed last group session, could you tell me how your son is?
Oh, yeah.
If it's appropriate. I mean,
No, it's fine. So for people that were not here, the quick recap is that our August has been sort of a very crazy month. Actually, I have a funny additional story to add. But the quick wrap up to David's question is that my son came down with a very mysterious illness that started off looking like a virus that we kind of overlooked as the flu, and then it turned into a swollen leg and ankle, and then it turned into 11 days at the hospital and staying there with all kinds of tests and 2 surgeries. He's doing great. After all that, he's at home. He's doing his physio every day. He's planning to be involved in sports in about a month, and yeah, so he's taken a boatload of antibiotics every day, but he's good, so this is life, right? We have to be grateful for what we have and let go of all that we didn't get. And speaking of which, I just shared with Garth, I went on a very important work trip on Sunday to spend some time with a professional client I have, a business, and hopefully I was doing some development sessions with them, and then that would turn into another year of work with them. And the comedy of this is that I left at 6 a.m. on Sunday. Like I got up at whatever 5 and was at the airport. No, I got up 4:30, so I had to be at the airport to get on a plane at 6. And then I arrived to the hotel at midnight, because it was in Florida, all the way across the country. And so I let the organizers know, well, I'll sleep in a little bit and then we'll have a meeting like 10 o'clock and get at it. So 10 o'clock, I go down to get ready for my day of working the scene, opening hearts and minds, getting ready for another year of opportunity. And all we talked about was evacuation plans, because the hotel we were in was right in the storm path of the new tropical storm. And then I basically turned around and came back the next day. So this is life. And life teaches us all we need to know. And I think we're going to reflect on that today. So where I wanted to go from there as a segue is into the very simple idea. I'm going to sort of connect a couple of simple things here that, and hopefully you've heard me say this before, there is nothing that you are living that is not your life. And when I say that, I mean that in 2 ways. The first is that it's very hard as a human not only build a story about what we think our life should be and what we think our life is, but more so to hold that with a certain amount of humor and freedom and surrender and flexibility. We just sort of keep showing up hoping that things will just go our way or follow the plan or respond to our intentions. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. I think someone just put a chat in about that. We plan, God laughs. Exactly. Chris got it. So the first comment is that it's an important thought pattern to become more aware of, which is whenever we feel frustrated at a life event that we blame or accuse as sort of interrupting your life. And I think the concept of something interrupting your life, if you ever notice that thought or feeling, is an important one to catch. Because wherever you catch that thought or feeling that something is interrupting your life, then you have an opportunity to cultivate a deeper awareness of the fact that that is revealing that in that moment, you are more committed to the world in your mind than the world at hand. Now, again, it's very normal. It's easy to do, but it's frustrating when we live in that kind of tension with the way things are. It means that there is a struggle to accept. And one of the reasons why that's so important for our work here is because if we are souls evolving, and if our primary purpose here is soul work, and this, by the way, is the focus of the class, the course, but if our primary work is soul work, then that thought, this is getting in the way, right? My son's illness got in the way. The storm got in the way. These things weren't supposed to happen. That's showing me that if I'm thinking at it like that, or looking at it like that, that I'm missing something. I'm missing a very important opportunity to practice my soul work of learning and loving, helping, and being. But the other thing that I think is important about this idea that everything you are living is your life is that I can't help but feel a kind of direct parallel or connection to the idea that all things exist within the natural laws. Now, the word law is not like my favorite analogy, but when I say natural laws, I think more in the spirit of Eastern or indigenous tradition that would talk about the way, right? The way of the Tao, for example, or the way of life, right? The natural laws would be sort of a somewhat indigenous translation. And that means that there's a design, an order to the way things work. And it also means that nothing is outside that. Right? So that's sort of the parallel. Nothing, no atrocity, no technology, no amount of greed lives outside the natural order. And that's sometimes hard to swallow because we'd like to think of them as absolutely foreign, absolutely out of place, absolutely unacceptable. But the reality is, if they exist, then the universe has accepted them, or perhaps you might say has allowed the conditions for their existence. But the question in the evolution of the self is no different than the question in the evolution of anything in the natural world, in the cosmos, which is it sustainable? Does it contribute to the common good? Is it vibrant? And does it lead to more of the same? Is it regenerative, right? That's really what we see as the mark of the material world, which is, yes, it's an endless cycle of creation and destruction, but we look at the evolution of species, and we look at the evolution of the planet, and we see a kind of progress. And even in human systems, which seem not very, not like something to be particularly proud of at all, when you look at economic disparity and racial disparity and greed and violence and all these sorts of things. At the same time, with all due respect to the love and wisdom that previous generations and traditions held for us 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, there can be no doubt that there is also an evolution. Even within the last 100 years, if you think about the United States or Canada, and this is awful to even have to say this out loud, but women and indigenous people have only just become, in the last 100 years, treated as humans. And when I say treated as humans, I mean legally. Like legally, vote, not have to ask permission for everything from a white man. I mean, that's insane. But my point is that if it was like that just 100, 150 years ago, and now we're talking about transgender equality in the schools and gender fluidity in relationships and new systems of economics and criticizing and deconstructing everything, politics, economy, sports. Well, we're getting somewhere. Now, admittedly, it doesn't feel fast enough for a lot of us, right? It feels like, well, okay, maybe there's a little destruction before the next rebirth, just the way the forest traditionally would burn in order to renew, although not in the way that we see with the wildfires, which frankly are one of the leading causes has been the protection of property, right? Which many people know. So it's either not investing in allowing forest systems to develop naturally, so save money, don't send those foresters out there for preventative work, or protecting properties and things like that. And so what's happened is that millions of acres of forest have just built up excess fuel that didn't used to happen. And so smaller fires used to be quite common, and these kinds of large scale wildfires that we're seeing are absolutely out of the ordinary. So where am I going with all this, right? We're kind of making this progress from, hey, whatever happens, it's still your life, to whatever occurs in the world, it's still within the laws of nature. So where does that take us? Well, I thought it might be a nice resting place today to land in the nurturing embrace of nature. We often think of people who are fascinated with nature or love nature as a category of people, right? There's people like Joni, the forest bathers, or I know Dick there knows of the work of Bill Plotkin and people who take people out into nature to learn about self and soul in other ways. And then as though there were other categories of people. Well, then there's the yoga people, and I guess they're fine being inside. And then there's the church people, and they're inside. And, but for today's conversation, I would like to suggest that nature is a non-negotiable partner in the evolution of the soul. And we don't necessarily all need to have the same depth of relationship or volume of relationship, but what I would like to propose is that you can't really experience the depths of yourself or your relationship to life without some openness and connection to the wisdom, the love, and the experience of nature. So on that note, what I would love to do is transition to something a little more experiential, a little less philosophical, and I certainly can pause before we get into a little reading and a little meditation to see if anybody just wanted to jump in before we continue on. Anyone? You would just unmute, speak up.
Jonathan, when you talk about growth and destruction,
Yeah.
and I think you're positing that growth happens without destruction sometimes. Wouldn't you say species going extinct might be growth and destruction? over a longer period of time, that it's a different time frame, but is that growth and destruction?
So, yeah, I think it's important to challenge the oversimplification of a spiritual view of the world that might want to, I'm just going to back up and then come in, that might want to say something like, widespread human growth, bad, wilderness, good, species extinction, bad, preservation of everything, good. And the reality is, life is the dance of the two. It's neither extreme. Now, in terms of extinction, what I know is that every creature eventually becomes extinct on this planet. And natural historians will say that, everything, they say everything eventually becomes extinct. So yes, the extinction of species is a part of life on the planet. And I think we also have to be careful that we don't other ourselves from the natural world as though humans weren't animals. We're just acting on them. So we are just as susceptible to extinction as anything else. And I think what is distressing about our species for many of us is that the rate of extinction we are causing other species.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you bring up something that connects me right to, I think, the spiritual point, which is, does this need to matter ethically or morally? And I would say no, it doesn't actually need to matter ethically or morally that we are ruining the world, because the experience of ruining the world will teach us what we need to know. In other words, I don't think we need a code or a system to tell us that what we've done is probably not great and should not continue. We can come to that conclusion through the direct experience of what's happening. And we can experience that physically, because we're literally running out of clean water. We're literally running out of renewable resources, and so on and so forth. We have fairly obvious, nearly universal scientific agreement about climate change and so on. So what happens, to the point, is that life is teaching us that if we want to continue to facilitate the extinction of other species at this unnatural rate, then we're just going to join them sooner, much sooner than later. And so what's happening, although I know some of you have nodded about this already, is we just don't know if enough of us will figure this out soon enough. And that will be the testament to the viability of our species. Who knows? But I will tell you, it's going to sound like a very random note, but I started to watch, while I was traveling, some of these new amazing documentaries about dinosaurs. I'm not really into dinosaurs, but Apple TV in particular has produced some, with Richard Attenborough, has produced some stunning documentaries about what the world of dinosaurs was like. Now, why would I be talking about dinosaurs in response to Loretta's comment, or even the theme today, which is the learning from nature? Well, the reason why I'd like personally to start looking at dinosaurs again is because they were just so much more successful than us, right? I mean, we're talking about creatures that lived a long time. And frankly, were fairly efficient at using resources, right? These were enormous creatures, and a huge number of them were vegetarians. The biggest of them were vegetarians, right? I mean, that's stunning. So we had I don't even know the right word, mammoth, pardon the pun, creatures surviving on this planet for extremely long periods of time. And here we are, sometimes boasting as much as 60,000 years of human culture. Like, it's not even nothing. It's barely the sneeze of a brontosaurus, right? So the natural world and natural history, I believe, if we study it both with material science and symbolic sight and an open heart, it not only reminds us of the depth of our interconnection with all life, but it shows us something about how to live successfully in this world and with each other. And that's really, full circle, the topic of today, which is, how is nature teaching you? How has nature taught you? And I would argue it's always teaching us, both through the disastrous hurricane that's ripping things apart right now, and also through the extraordinary moments of peace in a forest that seem to speak directly to our souls and feed and nourish the very cells of our body. So we take another step. Okay, and if you want to jump in, that's okay. Take your thoughts, keep them there. What I thought we could do is maybe take a breath together. And then I'd like to read just a couple of passages and then move into a guided meditation. And then let's talk a little bit. All right, shall we? Okay, if you would like, I encourage you to sit comfortably but alert, and sort of ready yourself for a period of eyes closed reflections. And I'll start with these readings, and I hope they are not just readings, but they evoke something for you. And then we'll move into a sort of a guided visualization, and that's not really for everyone, but just do your best. I'm going to invite you to do your best with that. And that just means use your imagination and your intuition. Just see what comes up. Don't spend any time judging it. Just follow whatever you get. Thoughts, images, ideas, and we'll see where we go. All right. With that, let's close our eyes together for a moment. And I invite you to take a big full breath in. No special technique, really. Just big, deep breath in. A little extra at the top. And then long exhale, just like a sigh, let it all go. And you can do maybe 4 of those, one for each of the directions. For the east, where the sun rises, contemplation of new beginnings that you invite into your life. One for the south, gratitude for the journey of life and all the experiences that have taught us along the way. Deep breath in, or in honor of the West. Big breath in, a little more at the top. And a big exhale, accepting the impermanence of life, the letting go. Moving that breath to the direction of the setting sun, and honoring the cycles that we are all a part of. And another big breath to the north. For most of us, this is the direction of the North Pole, of the cold air. This is the direction of the long winter. Time of reflection, integration, integrating the year, the seasons. And so we pause just to remember that importance of rest and integration, so that we can move to new beginnings, trust and explore in life's experience, accept the letting go and surrender, and then integrate once again. These are the cycles of our days, our seasons, and our lives. Gary Snyder, the nature poet and conservation advocate, wrote this beautiful poem, Prayer for the Great Family. Gratitude to Mother Earth, sailing through night and day, and to her soil, rich, rare, and sweet. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to plants, the sun-facing, light-changing leaf and fine root hairs, standing still through wind and rain. Their dance is in the flowing spiral grain. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to air, bearing the soaring, swift, and the silent owl at dawn. Breath of our song, clear spirit breeze. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to wild beings, our brothers, sisters, teaching secrets, freedoms, and ways, who share with us their milk, self-complete, brave, and aware. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to water, clouds, lakes, rivers, glaciers, holding or releasing, streaming through all our bodies, salty seas. In our minds, so be it. Gratitude to the sun, blinding, pulsing light through trunks of trees, through mists, warming caves where bears and snakes sleep. He who wakes us, in our minds, so be it. And gratitude to the great sky, who holds billions of stars and yet goes beyond that, beyond all powers and thoughts, and yet is within us. Grandfather Space, and the mind is his wife. So be it. John Burroughs wrote, I'm in love with this world because I have nestled lovingly in it. I have climbed its mountains, roamed its forest and sailed its waters, crossed its deserts and felt the sting of its frost, the oppression of its heat, the drench of its rain, the fury of its wind, and always have beauty and joy waited upon my goings and comings. And so we move to a quiet place within ourselves, together as one, and yet in our own place, in our own space, quiet, growing awareness of silence and stillness. And in the darkness of your inner vision, I invite you to remember a time and place where nature touched you deeply, a profound experience of nature. Just let one scene come to mind and try to let it present itself to you without picking one to impress or one to mine for its obvious richness, but just see what comes to mind in this moment as you remember a powerful moment when nature touched your heart. And if you can cultivate that memory right now, that feeling, seeming, being, what was the temperature like that day? What were the colors of the scene? The textures? Were you alone or with others? Did this involve animals or an animal? What did it feel like? Take a moment if you can find that feeling again. Any memory at all. A powerful experience of nature. And can you remember what it meant to you? Or what it taught you, what it showed you, or how it healed you, whatever that was that made it special in the moment. And as you recall this memory, and keep the images as clear in your mind as you can, or keep bringing them up, bringing them back, bringing them up, that place, that feeling. Imagine now that that very same moment, that very same place, not only still lives within you, but it speaks to you right now. It holds a new message for today. What does the spirit of that memory want for you today? Open your mind and heart. Don't judge. Just see what comes to you, a word, an image, a feeling. If the spirit of that memory, that place, that creature could teach you something, show you something today. What would it ask of you? How would it guide you? Let it be simple. Don't overthink it. And can you feel it or hear it in a simple summary, a simple, essential teaching, practice, or message? And when you're ready, breathe that energy into yourself. Imagine that that insight or feeling or picture is an energy that lives within you, for that's what it is, and feed that. Nice breath in, let it expand and nourish your whole body, from the top of your head to the tips of your fingers, down your spine to the tips of your toes. And then when you're ready, we'll just come back. So I do understand that these kinds of things are vivid and powerful for some and not really a cup of tea for others. And that's okay if that's how it was. But since we are a community and we are in this energy together, I'd love to open the circle now and hear your comments or questions, or if there was a clear insight or message or something you felt you got. I'm sure there's a simple way to share it. As an example, and then I'll stop talking, I'm going to give you what came to me, because it was really not what I expected at all, but I want to give you an example of sharing it concisely. I remembered, and some of you were there, being in Denver, Colorado for a closing ceremony as I was preparing to move on from a community there. And we were out in a field. We went out into nature in a park to do the closing ceremony instead of at the center. And for some reason, it was the memory of that park. It wasn't swimming with dolphins. It wasn't stepping on a bear. It was a park in a city, and remembering how powerful and sacred that felt for me, as much or more than any human constructed space, and was a bittersweet affirmation of how my own work needs to remain close to nature. And then the translation was more personal, that I, even though I live in nature now, that I need to make very specific time to simply be submerged in it without practice or thought, just in it. There you go. Gayla, your hand is up. So unmute and go for it.
Well, mine was actually fairly powerful in that just before you asked us to connect there, I get a calling that I've left the lawnmower out in front of my garage, and the grass called me to come get the lawnmower where it belonged. And that connection takes me to my connection to grass with Her in Italy, where they have done a lot of work with communicating with the plants. They have a whole program. And when I was there, they demonstrated how a blade of grass could produce music.
Mm.
And the message is to be open and not limited in expectation for how communication is coming.
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Someone else, either a story, an insight, maybe an author you like who writes on these things. Joni and I have read a fellow named Stephen Buhner, right? And I can't remember any of the specific titles. Lost Language of Plants was one of them. And it reminded me of what Gayla just said. He's worth looking up. Let's go Deborah, and then after that, Loretta. Deborah, please. Unmute and begin.
I have two thoughts. And I don't know if I feel differently because I've grown up in Maine, and you're almost known to have salt in your bones if you've if you've had that. And the thing I realized as you were speaking, not so much that I have so many beautiful memories that I can always go back to those, but I don't believe as I was growing up, it was such a natural, beautiful, God-gifted environment.
Mm-hmm.
It was natural to, so natural to me. And the appreciation of it was I didn't have to go too far. I just had to live maybe 30 miles away in a city type atmosphere. And I was always drawn to the natural part of the world, and always had to be by the ocean, which I see as one of the greatest things that was created. And so with all these positive memories, I think it has been very helpful to me to develop a spiritual life, because I can always return to all the elements of the earth and the sky and the sunsets. And I mean, I have such beautiful memories. The thing that, and I, feel a little regret for that, for not appreciating it as much as I should when I was younger, of the gift I was given. But that's easy. It's not a traumatic memory. It's just recognizing that you're a child evolving. But I think I feel a lot differently on a lot of things because of how I grew up. And I remember a story by a scientist. I was feeling bad that I wasn't totally vegetarian because, fish and so forth is the diet of all my generation, really. From the time the country was even developed on the Mayflower. I have people from the Mayflower and, came over from England and so forth. And when I got into the science, there was a scientist, I can't remember the name, and I'm very sorry because I'm getting a little older, but who did a study, perhaps somebody remembers it, that when the shrimp were put in the boiled water, the geraniums reacted every time a shrimp was dropped in. And I and I thought all of life really is life.
Mhm.
And you have to go, I resolved it to the fact that I have to go with my intuitive sense and my being and do what I could possibly do. And here I am, 75 years old, and I've managed to do quite well through 5 episodes or more of very serious illnesses. And I just feel that the connection of nature is important. It gives you a sense of the intelligence of the universe.
Mhm.
There's something behind all of what we see. And on the other idea that you had, I can probably bring that up later, but I think appreciation for nature is good, but judgment, I think, needs to come out of it, and you have to follow your own desires. I know that people are very interested in, different windmills and so forth, but I don't see that positive for the life, for the environment at this point. I think we have the technology, my own opinion, that we have the technology and the science that is moving so rapidly that if we could just be a little more patient, maybe we wouldn't harm the animals so much with these decisions before we actually completely know
Hmm.
about it. I worry about the birds. I worry about all those things, I want electricity and I want it to be clean, but I worry about the whales, the species that speak to each other, so I just trust and turn it over to God that they will work with the brilliant minds and hurry up and get this world taken care of. And meanwhile, at my age, I can pray and probably just enjoy and send love out into the earth. So, and I never had any problems with Indians. We always grew up with them. And I always wanted to be the Indian if I went out to play. I don't see any, I have no racial view in my eyes, through my eyes. So it's hard for me to understand, a lot of things that are going on. So I have to leave it to God to use those that are in the best interest of all concerned, and do what I can to send love, kindness out. That's my thought.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Deborah. Loretta, how about you? And then I see Dick's hand is up and Joni. So we're going to get everyone in.
I remember driving along in Rutherford, Vermont, or coming from there. I don't remember which. It was many years ago. The stream was along the side of the road and the hill on the other side. And the message that I got was, you can spend as much time in nature as you choose. And since I'm right on the precipice of a transition in my life, that's very important.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very simply put, but that's also very powerful, right? Because if we've just acknowledged in Deborah's comments and my long comments that, in a sense, nature is our first place, or kind of the raw expression of spirit, well, we can marinate in that all we want, and we just often choose not to. Dick, you're next. Joni on deck, and then we also have Sylvia. So hang on, Sylvia, we'll get there.
Okay. probably on the same theme. One thing I wanted to mention is I remember that park in Denver where I was there and you were there, and some of us on there were also, Joni, I believe, was there. And that was a special energy because I've been in Washington, or that was what park was that?
Cheeseman.
Cheeseman, right. Okay, and it was a great experience, and I've been to Cheeseman many times. Never had an experience like that in Cheeseman the times I've been in there. So it was a special energy, which kind of is a bridge to what I was trying to talk about or think about, is that I struggle a lot in Denver, even since Jonathan has been here a few years ago, has grown exponentially, and it's getting more aggressive and more crowded and louder and more polluted and more ozone every day. Almost we get ozone now in the summer, and even getting up to the mountains, I mean, it's which we have a lot in Colorado, is extremely difficult, particularly on the weekends. The lines going up the highway. The point being, nature is being almost suffocated here, in a state that's, founded in nature, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to find my center, my inner power, my sense of the greatness of it all, and that's the frustration, and it seems to be happening in the world. It's getting more politically crazy, etc. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, except that it seems to be going the direction that I don't want to see. In other words, I'm feeling more congested and more finding it more difficult to open up to the deeper, the more important things in life, and it seems like fewer and fewer people are going in that direction as well. Anyway, I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, for some reason, it's just it just seems to be going the wrong way, and how to hold that is really, really tricky for me. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Dick, I would just echo here in the Denver area. Yep.
Well, and I'm not going to jump in with like a long commentary because I want to give others the chance to speak. But I will say, Dick, I think it's just important that you say it. It doesn't sound like it was profound, but I think it's important that not only for our own healing through feeling to verbalize when we feel the congestion growing and the chaos growing, but I think that what got us to this place was the fact that so much modernization and industrialization and spread of society happened without anyone saying anything. Just kind of like, oh, there's a new neighborhood I could move into. So no, I think it's important just to acknowledge that it doesn't feel right for you, and I think probably for most of us.
Yeah,
now,
okay, I was just going to say, just a sense of powerlessness is the part that I really feel scared about. So yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll come. We will run out of time today, but we're not going to lose that theme to come back to for sure. Powerlessness, and what are we really doing here? How can we be a part of this change or weather the transition? Joni, you are next.
Thank you. Gosh, I feel for everyone who's spoken today. I did want to, even more so now, I truly want to, take just a minute or two and talk about my vision. It occurred, some people know I live just north of the Denver Tech Center, and I have this little space with a lake that I go to quite frequently. And last year I had taken a group, led them on one of my forest therapy walks, and I had chosen a spot under a tree, a large, beautiful tree, just on the edge of the lake. And I wanted my participants to have the best seating, of the view. So I kind of sat back in an area where I wasn't normally wouldn't sit, normally wasn't quite as comfortable. I was not quite in the clearing, and I was in like some I don't know, I called the flowers, these plants, chamomile. I don't know if they were, but just thousands and thousands of these kind of like reeds, about maybe 3 feet high, with just hundreds of little white flowers on it. And that's where I led our group and our exercise of invitations. And over the next hour or so, the sun rose just past noon, and the sun hit all the flowers that I was sitting in the midst of. And all of a sudden, it was like this sound of static almost. And like, I swear, every single flower all of a sudden had a bee on it. And it was like one of my worst kind of nightmares, of just being in the midst of just hundreds and hundreds of bumblebees. But I had a group of people, and I couldn't lose my shit. I didn't want to. And, it turned out to be this unbelievably lovely experience, because they had their thing going on, and I didn't have any nectar that they wanted, and they left me alone. I didn't get stung once, and I just had the experience of being in the midst of all this, taking it all in, but at the same time, conducting, the process that I guide people through. And I guess what I want to say, like, to you, Dick, and Chris, and all of us who get so caught up in and disgusted by so much of our surroundings. Like, for me, as a number of people here in Denver, and I don't disagree with anything that Chris or Dick has said today, but if you take just minutes and moments, you can find the most blissful, extraordinary experiences. And even though I'm like have my sights outside of the city to eventually settle, I know that I could be living there, in nature, and not experience as much nature and beauty and awe that I can experience with some intention where I am in this moment. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And again, I don't want to say much because I want to keep going, but yeah, even when we're overwhelmed by the way that the nature we want to go to may be distorted and claimed, the gift of nature is that if we need its medicine, even just to deal with what's happening to it, we can find it in the simplest ways, right? Under a tree, or and that's when I was in the middle of this crazy trip and the storm was coming, and we were all getting ready, go up to your rooms and pack your bag. I just unpacked my bag, all this stuff. I did that. I took that moment, and I just, because I had a little balcony looking over the ocean in this hotel, like it was going to be this great, event. But instead of getting lost in the rush to leave and the panic and the closing the bridge and what's going to happen, I mean, of course I had an extra 5 minutes. Of course I did. No one knew how long it would take me to pack my bag, put my socks in, so I took it, and I sat on that balcony, and I was just quiet, and it gave me everything I could have wanted, Sylvia, possibly one of our last to share today. Please jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I had unmuted. I'm sorry, my camera's not working today. I agree with so much of what everybody already said. And growing up, when I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to be in the Northern California area of the mountains, the High Sierras. And for the first time, experienced being high up in a meadow surrounded by forests and peaks and a beautiful waterfall. And my family that I was with went off doing other things. I found myself quite alone, and I had a most beautiful, wonderful experience looking at all the flowers and the green grass and the stream rushing by and the waterfall falling in the distance above the pine trees. And I thought, well, when I grow up, I'm going to travel the world and see all these beautiful, pristine places. Unfortunately, as I grew up, beautiful, pristine places keep disappearing. And, you know, with the pollution and everything that you all have talked about, I can't help feeling sad about the young people growing up in a world today where they can't have a similar experience of the serenity and the soulful feeling you get out in nature of communing with it. And I keep reminding myself, well, every generation has a purpose, and there's a reason why these kids are glued to their electronics and acting in this way. I just feel like if you put them out in nature, they might learn something, but that's not up to me. So not sure where I'm going with this, except to say that I'm trying to connect with people now. I've kind of been all my life wishing I could be like a hermit out in the woods, but of course I had to have a job and raise kids and experience life like everyone else did. And now I'm in my 70s also, and I want to make some kind of a effort now, because I think I've shied away from getting involved or connecting or doing anything most of my life. And now I want to experience groups like this and learn how to connect with people more and see if I can feel better. There must be a reason for all the experiences I've had in life. What can I do with all this? How can I, you know, contribute something for a change? And thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. And thank you for, you know, we're at the end of our time, but I think you shared a really wonderful, I feel like what you verbalized for yourself would be a beautiful place for any of us to be, which is to ask the question, how can I help? To cherish the opportunities to be in nature that we do have, and to speak up. What I heard was the importance of speaking up for nature as a path, not just to serve nature, but to heal ourselves, like you talked about teenagers being outside. And so I hope you do find more groups like this, or join us again next week, and that how you can help specifically comes more clear over time. I think it just might. I know there's a lot of us here on the screen today. I would love to hear from everyone, but I also know people carve out a little time, and then we have things to do and places to go. So, and of course, it sort of just feels like we're getting started. So thank you for being here. I do have a reading that I wanted to close with, and it's from Walden, Henry David Thoreau, and so thank you again, whether you spoke or didn't speak, just for being here, and for lifting the energy that that supports each of us for whatever we are going through and going towards. So thank you.
Right there, but you got two. I'll leave those here.
So here we go, and I welcome you to take it in as a meditation or a reading. You can close your eyes or not. but here we are from Walden. We need the tonic of wilderness to wade sometimes in marshes where the bittern and the meadowhen lurk, and hear the booming of the snipe, to smell the whispering sedge where only some wilder and more solitary fowl builds her nest, and the mink crawls with its belly close to the ground. At the same time that we are earnest to explore and learn all things, we require that all things be mysterious and unexplorable, that land and sea be infinitely wild, unsurveyed and unfathomed by us because unfathomable. We can never have enough of nature. We must be refreshed by the sight of inexhaustible vigor, vast and titanic features, the seacoast with its wrecks, the wilderness with its living and its decaying trees, the thundercloud and the rain which lasts 3 weeks and produces freshness. We need to witness our own limits transgressed and some life pasturing freely where we never wandered. And so with that, I hope you will each and all find a few minutes in nature today, whether it's a park or a garden, or even just sitting quietly with your food before you eat. So with that, hope to see you next week. Some of you, hopefully, will see you in the class, the
Thank you.
course, and lots of love.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, everybody. Peace out.
Thanks, Jonathan. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.